Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to share some wedding and sending love cards using the PAScribe collection from Spellbinders. I have two of the beautiful press plates here. This is the Sending Love, and then we have On Your Wedding Day. Now, these are press plates, so they can be used in the Betterpress system, but I'm going to be using them for foiling today. Because of the style cards that I wanted to create, I thought foiling just gave a little bit more of an elegant look and was more of the look that I was going for. So I have my glimmer machine here to the side. It is warming up, and I'll be using some matte gold foil for one of the sentiments, and then I'm going to be using matte silver foil for the other one. So the gold foil is going to be for the On Your Wedding Day one, and then the silver one is going to be for the Sending Love one. So with my glimmer machine heated up, I have my foil on there, and I have my foil just a little bit bigger than that sentiment. I didn't want to make it too big because sometimes if it's too big, you get some overfoiling, and by not having it too big, I can eliminate that. Now, even with that, it's not the exact size of my plate. It is a little bit bigger. I didn't have any overfoiling. This is that gorgeous sentiment, and I love how elegant it looks. I'm going to next go and do the Sending Love one. This is going to be with that matte silver foil, and I'm doing this on Hammermill Cardstock. And then anytime I do foiling, I also do the solid hot foiling at the same time. Now, because these pieces of foil are a little bit smaller and they're just a little bit bigger than my sentiments, I'm not going to be using these for backgrounds or whatnot. I'm going to be using them mostly for die cutting little pieces out. The solid hot foiled image of the Sending Love, I will be using that. I will be die cutting that down and we'll be creating a card with that because it just was perfect for a simple idea that I wanted to do at the end of this video. So after doing my regular foiling, I let my solid hot foil plate heat up, and then I'm doing the solid hot foiling, and all of it is done on Hammermill Cardstock. So I love that look there. It turned out absolutely perfect. The matte foil has a tiny bit of a shimmer to a shine to it. Like, it's more like satin to me. So it's not that it's completely matte and dull. It does have a beautiful look to it. I wanted these cards to have a little bit more of an elegant look to it, and I thought the matte finish was going to be a little bit better than, say, a glossy finish. But if you prefer that finish, you absolutely could do this. Now, because I'm using part of these for doing die cutting little bits and pieces, like these gold leaves that I have pre-die cut here, we're done with that solid hot foiled piece as well as my florals there. I also did the little extra piece that I cut off. There is a little bit of a seam on the solid hot foiled piece, but I just avoided that when I did my die cutting. For this first card here, I am using the Fresh Picked Labels die set, and I have several different layers die cut. I love when you have labels or nestabilities or whatever with several different sizes. It makes layering really easy. For my florals, I'm using the Gorgeous You Florals die cut set. For the card base, I'm using some Sage cardstock. This is one of the old colors. For my dark reds here, I have Mahogany cardstock. It is one of the older colors, and when I was creating my supply list, I realized that it is no longer available through Spellbinders. So a good alternative with the new colors would be Merlot. It's brighter and it's a little bit lighter, would work well for these cards as well. So for my die cuts here, I have these ones die cut out of some pink sand cardstock, and I'm using some aged mahogany distress ink to ink blend around the edges. When you ink blend around the die cuts, it gives them a little bit of visual dimension, and for the look that I was going for, it just worked well. For my leaves here, I have them die cut out of the Sage cardstock as well, and I'm just using some Pine Needles Distress ink to do that ink blending. I want to still see that Sage cardstock, just like with the pink sand. I still wanted to see some of that pink sand, but I wanted to give that a little bit of dimension, and with that, doing that ink blending, it does it perfectly. So I used my sticky mat here to hold my pieces in place while I was doing that ink blending, and it really helps, especially for those tiny little die cuts. Before putting my mat away, I am going to clean it. I just have a Mighty Mister with some water there. Just make sure that my mat is clean for when I pull it out later on in the video, and I don't get some contamination between the different inks. These florals are really easy to put together. The base of this one I did cut out of that mahogany cardstock. This is just going to show up the center part of that flower. And again, Merlot is a good alternative for that and would work perfectly for this easily as a substitute. I have some Barely Art glue in a fine line bottle, and I use this pretty much all the time when I'm card making. I really enjoy using liquid glues when card making because it gives you that wiggle room, especially when you're assembling die cuts. And by having it in a fine tip bottle, it works well for larger die cuts as well as small die cuts. And I use it to easily put all of my cards together as well. These pieces go together really, really easily, and it's really easy to know exactly what goes where. Sometimes if I'm a little bit confused as to which piece goes where, I just look at the front of the package. But this one here, it was really easy to know exactly which goes where because there are some line details in the petals, and those petals on the larger pieces that didn't have the line pieces had pieces that went over top of them, so it was really easy to see. For my smaller florals from this die set here, I wasn't sure when I was doing my die cutting if I was going to want them in gold, if I was going to want them in that mahogany color or in pink sand. So I did do my ink blending on the pink sand when I was doing the ink blending for the larger flowers here. I didn't do any ink blending on the mahogany because it's just so dark, you're really not going to see it. When you're die cutting them, it also die cuts a center of the florals, so I'm taking those florals, those centers, and putting them on a different color floral. The easiest way to do that is just a dot of liquid glue and then using a jewel picker to put those in place. The largest flower here, I have a center that I die cut with that matte gold as well, the solid hot foiled piece. If you don't like to do solid hot foiling or foiling is not your thing, you can easily use these plates in your Betterpress system and emboss them with some gold embossing powder and then just use specialty cardstock. Or you could die cut them with white cardstock, use some Versamark ink, and then emboss it with that gold embossing powder. A little bit harder with flower centers. For my last card, I'll share a different way to do the flower centers that I also like to do often, and it just gives them a little bit of extra texture as well. With my florals all together, I'm ready to start assembling them on the card. So I started with those two larger ones. I knew I wanted them outside of that darker middle one. And from there, I'm taking the little florals, and I ended up using all three of the different colors. I didn't want to have the pink sand one right against the other pink sand ones, and I didn't want to have the mahogany ones against the mahogany ones. So it actually worked well to have them in different colors. Now you may have noticed when I was doing my flower assembly, I didn't put centers in those pink sand ones. The main reason is I die cut more of those than I die cut of the other colors, so I didn't have enough flower centers for them. So what I'm going to do is once my card is totally finished being assembled, I will use some gold Nouveau drops and just put a drop of them in the center. It adds that little bit of dimension. It perfectly blends with the golds, and it just gives it a little bit of a different texture. I did die cut and I did ink blend some smaller leaves with that pink or with that sage cardstock. I ended up not using them. I ended up using the matte gold ones. It just worked better between the card base as well as around the edges of my shape here. I liked the look of it a little bit better, but you can easily swap them out for green leaves if you prefer that. I really love having a combination of the green and the metallic. I think it just looks a little bit more interesting, but neither one is right or wrong. And you may have noticed when I was assembling, I did use my fingers to shape that center flower a little bit more, just to give it a little bit more dimension. It also gives me some area to poke or put flowers underneath there. It just raises that up and makes that a little tiny bit easier. So here is those Nouveau drops to finish that card off. And the hardest part of all of these cards in this video, what took the longest was doing the die cutting and figuring out exactly where I wanted my florals to go. The assembly is super quick and easy. Next, we're going on to one of the Sending Love foiled backgrounds or foiled sentiments. This one here, I'm using the Mirrored Arch label die set. I have a white base done with some thick cardstock. I have a combination of forest cardstock and that sage cardstock to do my layers or my matted pieces, and then that foiled sentiment in the center. So for these cards, I'm using a lot of the older colors, but you could easily swap in some of the newer colors. I'm trying to use up some of that old cardstock. So you'll likely see me doing card or colored card bases in the next few videos, just to use some of that stuff that's been discontinued up. Now for this particular one, I wanted to use a different floral, so I'm using the Scallop Journal Cards die set. I have all of my florals die cut and ready to go, and I'm doing my ink blending very similar to how I did my last flowers. The smaller ones, I'm using a detailed ink blending brush to start with the heavier amount of ink in the center of the flower, and then going clockwise and counterclockwise on my way out, so that as it has less ink, it puts less ink on that cardstock. And by doing it both ways, I don't get a heavier amount towards one side of those florals. The tiny florals here have 2 layers to them, so I did use an ink blending brush just to do a little bit of ink on the bottom of those florals, and then layered them together while they were still on my sticky mat. It just meant that I didn't have to hold on to the florals while I was assembling them. However, if you do it this way, I would recommend waiting until those florals are dry before taking them off your mat. I got a little bit rushed, and because that ink or because that glue hadn't set yet, sometimes it did move a little bit, so just be careful of that. With those florals done, I can start assembling them on the card. You could easily put the florals onto your leaf piece here because it's curved and it's already assembled. You could assemble them ahead of time and then just put the entire thing onto your card. I've done a video with these florals already, and that's how I did it for that. For this one, I decided to put them on and put the leaves on and just assemble them right on the card. Either way works. You get a very similar look. It doesn't really change anything. The only thing, it just means that you don't have to wait for your leaf and floral piece to completely dry before adding them to your card. You can let that glue start to settle and to dry while it's on your card base there. Now, for the center florals, I did that mahogany cardstock again. And for my tiny florals, I also did that mahogany cardstock. Now, the mahogany works really well for the florals that are out on the leaves. You can see them well. I had some extra florals and I really didn't want to store them, so I ended up tucking them under that larger mahogany floral. You don't really see it as much on the card because both are fairly dark florals. Had I paid attention, I should have done them in pink sand, so then you could see it a little bit better. But even though I have 2 dark florals together and you don't see the smaller one as well, it does still add some texture. You can see how easy it is to put these together by using just dots of glue and my jewel picker, especially for the smaller florals. I don't find that I need the jewel picker for the larger ones, but the smaller ones, it makes it easier to place them because my fingers aren't in the way. I can see exactly where those florals are and I can see how to position them. It's really easy to twist the jewel picker in my fingers in order to place them properly. A little bit harder when I was tucking them under these large florals. Another way to do it would be to assemble them because there is 2 pieces to them. There are some 4-petal flowers and 3-petal flowers that just layer on top of each other. You could also assemble them off the card, and then once the glue has set a little bit, you could put it on the card. Just like the last card, I'm putting a little bit of Nouveau drops, this time with silver because obviously it coordinates with the color scheme here. And sometimes when I'm doing my Nouveau drops, I get a little tiny, line where I went a little bit too quick and it put it on the rest of the leaf or the rest of the floral. I just use my die picker to help clean it up. That way I can have some nice precision there. For the last card, I hadn't initially planned on doing this card when I was planning on what to do, but because I really liked that solid hot foiled Sending Love, I liked the contrast of the white letters on the matte silver foil, I decided to create a very simple card with this. So my layers for this one are die cut with the Emerald Cut Labels die set. I have a Sage card base, the Merlot layer, and then pink sand layer. And these colors coordinate perfectly with the floral that I'm going to use. I'm using the Gorgeous You florals again. I only created one flower for this one. I wanted this one to just be very simple. I will often use a lot of florals when I'm creating with them, but you don't have to. That's just the look that I like. You could easily just do one stem of florals and create something that is very simple but elegant looking. And I love the contrast of the pink sand matte around that Sending Love sentiment with the ink blended floral. It makes it pop off a little bit better. Then we have the second card here, or this is actually the first card. I showed them back out of order. This is the On Your Wedding Day. I love the fact that it is perfect for a wedding day, but you can easily customize them to the wedding colors, making a perfect gift or perfect card to send with a gift. And then we have our Sending Love card with the Scallop Journal florals. So these are some great plates to create some beautiful, beautiful cards and have some fun with them. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate all the time that you spend with me. I hope you have a fantastic day.